There are no limits to ages or locations when God calls us to His work. Magdalena lives in the island nation of Trinidad and Tobago. After school, she walks to a nearby pharmacy to wait for her dad to pick her up. One day, Magdalena asked her dad, "May I give tracts to the people who walk by the pharmacy?" "That's a great idea," her dad said. He gave her some tracts, and she started distributing the pamphlets. Magdalena gave different tracts to a dentist who regularly walked by the pharmacy. One day she asked her dad to allow her to talk to the dentist about Jesus. As her dad proudly agreed, the next time she saw the dentist, Magdalena asked him, "Do you know Jesus?" "I've heard about Jesus, but I don't know him," the dentist said. "May I tell you about him?" Magdalena asked. So the man invited her to come to his office the following afternoon. Her dad permitted her to go and gave her a Bible to give to the dentist. The next day, there she was at the dentist office. She gave him the Bible, and he gladly accepted it. From that day on, Magdalena visited the dentist daily after school. They read stories from the Bible and talked about them. The dentist began to trust in Jesus. So Magdalena invited him to church on Sabbath. He smiled and accepted her invitation. The next Sabbath, Magdalena and her family picked up the dentist on their way to church. "Your daughter is wonderful," the dentist told her parents. "I didn't know anything about Jesus before I met her, but now I know him." We can follow Magdalena's example, whether we give out pamphlets, invite friends to meetings, or even when we return our tithe and promise offerings. We can always be an instrument for God's purpose. When you distribute your offerings according to what is suggested by the combined offering plan, you become part of a flowing current that distributes those financial resources locally, regionally, and worldwide, simultaneously promoting and sustaining all authorized ministries, missionary institutions, and projects. May we always put our desires last and God first.
On February 22, 1895, pioneer missionary Frank H. Westphal arrived in Brazil. He found the Adventist message had already arrived some 15 years earlier as ink on paper in a seaside port in the state of Santa Catarina. Frank and Mary Westphal began their work in Wisconsin, USA, where Frank worked to reach the German-speaking population. He attended Battle Creek College and taught at Union College before answering God's call to serve as a missionary. In 1894, the General Conference decided to send him to South America as the first ordained minister. In August 1894, Frank, Mary, their son, and baby daughter arrived in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Frank was appointed president of the South America East Coast Mission, which covered the territories of Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Brazil. Frank wasted no time and immediately traveled to Crespo, Argentina, where a group of Adventist believers were waiting. There, he helped establish the first Adventist church in South America. Soon, Frank turned his attention to Brazil. On July 18, 1894, Frank began visiting various places in the state of Sao Paulo, meeting with interested families and starting branch Sabbath schools. One of those stops was in Piracicaba, where he baptized Guilherme Stein Jr., the first Brazilian believer to be baptized in the country. From there, Frank traveled to Gaspar Alto to meet with another group of interested believers. When he arrived, he tried to find a place to hold meetings, but was met with opposition from the local religious leader. Finally, he decided to hold meetings by the river. On Sabbath, June 8th, after celebrating the Lord's Supper, 8 people were baptized. A few days later, 15 more people were baptized. On June 15th, the first Brazilian Adventist church was established in Gaspar Alto, less than 40 miles from where the Adventist message had first arrived 15 years earlier. After laboring in the mission field for 5 months, Frank returned to Buenos Aires to tragedy. His daughter Helen had taken ill and died on June 15th. 2 weeks before his return, and on the same day he had helped establish the church in Gaspar Alto. Despite tragedy and hardships, the Westfalls continued on and gave a total of 27 years of service in South America. Today, there are more than 1.7 million Seventh-day Adventists in Brazil and more than 18,000 churches and companies. There is one Adventist for every 122 people. To pioneer missionaries like Frank and Mary Westfall, we say, Obrigado.